Big ugly nose out of my business if he don't want to get it slapped.
Interesting facts about famous people.
50's Westerns nominated for an Oscar. Back in the day, when the Oscars meant something, the award ceremony every year was quite the event. We all tuned in to see which of our favourite actors and movies would garner a golden statuette. Today, we will take a look at arguably the decade that was the height of the Western genre, the 50s, and which Westerns were honoured with a nomination. If you enjoy this video, hit the notification button to get my new videos. If you want to check out my many other videos, head over to my channel. The link is in the description. Let's get into it. The Furies, 1950. A firebrand heiress clashes with her tyrannical father, a cattle rancher who fancies himself a Napoleon. But their relationship turns ugly only when he finds himself a new woman. Director, Anthony Mann. Cast, Barbara Stanwyck, Wendell Corey, Walter Houston, Judith Anderson. Nominated, Best Cinematography, Black and White. Annie Get Your Gun, 1950. The story of the great sharpshooter Annie Oakley, who rose to fame while dealing with her professional rival, Frank Butler. Directors, George Sidney, Busby Berkeley. Cast, Betty Hutton, Howard Keel, Louis Calhern, J. Carroll Naish. Winner of the Academy Award for Best Scoring of a Musical Picture. 3 other nominations: Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Best Cinematography, Colour, Best Film Editing.
Your baggage with the labels pasted on. The sawdust and the horses and the smell. The towel
The Gunfighter, 1950. Notorious gunfighter Jimmy Ringo rides into town to find his true love, who doesn't want to see him. He hasn't come looking for trouble, but trouble finds him around every corner. Director, Henry King. Cast, Gregory Peck, Helen Westcott, Millard Mitchell, Gene Parker. Nominated for Best Motion Picture Story. The award went to Panic in the Streets.
Now get away from here.
It's kind of strong talk, ain't it, Mr. Ringo?
You're Hunt Bromley, ain't you?
Broken Arrow, 1950. Tom Jeffords tries to make peace between settlers and Apaches in Arizona Territory. Director, Delmer Daves. Cast, James Stewart, Jeff Chandler, Deborah Paget, Basil Ruisdale. Nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Jeff Chandler, Writing Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Colour.
They found a pouch in one of the wounded men, and in the pouch there were 3 Apache scalps.
Singing Guns, 1950. Notorious stagecoach robber Rhiannon is unintentionally appointed as deputy when he saves the sheriff's life and must wear 2 hats between his new job that he enjoys and his old occupation that he misses. Director, R.G. Springsteen. Cast, Vaughn Monroe, Ella Raines, Walter Brennan, Ward Bond. Mule Train, one of the songs featured in this western and sung by Vaughn Monroe, was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song in 1950, but lost out to Mona Lisa from Captain Carey, USA. The Grass is Always Greener, 1950. Ranch hands get their ideas challenged when a stranger shows up, telling them how good they have things. Director, Richard L. Barr. Cast, Chill Wills, Vince Barnett, John Kellogg, Garrett Craig. Nominated for Best Short Subject, 2 Reels, Gordon Hollingshead. Sons of Pale Face, 1952. Junior Potter returns to claim his father's gold, which is nowhere to be found. Mike is the luscious head of a gang of thieves, and Roy Barton is the federal marshal, hot on her trail. Director, Frank Tashlin. Cast, Bob Hope, Jane Russell, Roy Rogers, Trigger. Nominated for Best Music, Original Song, Jack Brooks, for the song Am I in Love?
And the gals wear finery. East is east.
The Big Sky, 1952. The success of the journey focuses on keeping the Indian girl alive, as well as themselves, to complete trade with the Blackfeet. Director, Howard Hawks. Cast, Kirk Douglas, Dewey Martin, Elizabeth Threet, Arthur Honeycutt. Nominated for 2 Academy Awards. For Best Supporting Actor, Arthur Honeycutt, and for Best Cinematography, Black and White.
There'll be time for that next year when I come back. Well, I didn't think you had the sense to do it.
Viva Zapata, 1952. The story of Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata, who led a rebellion against the corrupt, oppressive dictatorship of President Porfirio Diaz in the early 20th century. Director, Elia Kazan. Cast, Marlon Brando, Gene Peters, Anthony Quinn, Joseph Wiseman. Winning for Best Supporting Actor, Anthony Quinn. Nominated for Best Actor, Marlon Brando. Best Story and Screenplay. Best Art Direction, Black and White. Best Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture.
I took their wives, too.
High Noon, 1952. A town marshal, despite the disagreements of his newlywed bride and the townspeople around him, must face a gang of deadly killers alone at noon, when the gang leader, an outlaw he set up years ago, arrives on the noon train. Director, Fred Zinnemann. Cast, Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly, Thomas Mitchell, Lloyd Bridges. Winning for Best Actor, Gary Cooper. Best Film Editing. Best Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture. And Best Song. Nominated for Best Motion Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. Hondo, 1953. Army dispatch rider Hondo Lane discovers a woman and young son living in the midst of warring Apaches and becomes their protector. Director, John Farrow. Cast, John Wayne, Geraldine Page, Ward Bond, Michael Pate. Nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Geraldine Page. Best Writing, Motion Picture Story. Calamity Jane, 1953. The story of Calamity Jane, her saloon, and her romance with Wild Bill Hickok. Director, David Butler. Cast, Doris Day, Howard Keel, Aline Ann McCleary, Philip Carey. Winning for Best Music, Original Song, Sammy Fain, Music. Paul Francis Webber, Lyrics, for the song Secret Love. Nominated for Best Sound, Recording, Best Music, Scoring of a Musical Picture. Shane, 1953. A weary gunfighter in 1880s Wyoming begins to envision a quieter life after befriending a homestead family with a young son who idolizes him, but a smoldering range war forces him to act. Director, George Stevens. Cast: Alan Ladd, Jean Arthur, Van Heflin, Brandon DeWilde. Winning for Best Cinematography, Colour, Loyal Greeks. Nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Brandon DeWilde. Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Jack Palance. Best Director, George Stevens. Best Picture, George Stevens. Best Writing Screenplay, A.B. Guthrie Jr. Broken Lance, 1954. The saga of the Devereaux Rancher family, set in 1880s Arizona. Director, Edward Dmytryk. Cast: Spencer Tracy, Robert Wagner, Gene Peters, Richard Widmark. Winning for Best Story for Philip Yordan. Nominated for Best Supporting Actress, Katie Gerardo. Red Garters, 1954. A man visits a frontier town, seeking to avenge his brother's murder. Director, George Marshall. Cast: Rosemary Clooney, Jack Carson, Guy Mitchell, Pat Crowley. Nominated for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Colour. Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955. A one-armed stranger comes to a tiny town possessing a terrible past they want to keep secret, by violent means if necessary. Director, John Sturgis. Cast: Spencer Tracy, Robert Ryan, Anne Francis, Dean Jagger. Nominated for Best Director, Best Actor, Spencer Tracy, Best Screenplay.
Well, you're beginning to make me mad.
All strangers do.
Well, they don't. I don't know. Some do when they come around snooping.
Nope, for what?
Oklahoma, 1955. In Oklahoma, several farmers, cowboys, and a traveling salesman compete for the romantic favors of various local ladies. Director, Fred Zinnemann. Cast: Gordon McRae, Gloria Graham, Gene Nelson, Charlotte Greenwood. Nominated for Best Cinematography, Colour, Best Film Editing. Winning for Best Scoring of a Musical Picture, Best Sound Recording. Friendly Persuasion, 1956. The pacifist attitude of a Quaker family is tested as a result of the American Civil War. Director, William Wyler. Cast: Gary Cooper, Dorothy McGuire, Anthony Perkins, Richard Eyre. 6 nominations for Best Motion Picture, Best Director, William Wyler, Best Supporting Actor, Anthony Perkins, Best Screenplay Adapted, Best Song, Friendly Persuasion, Thee I Love. Music by Dmitri Tiomkin. Lyrics by Paul Francis Weber. Best Sound Recording. The Rainmaker, 1956. During the Depression, a con man promises rain to a desperate drought-ridden Kansas town and marriage to a local desperate spinster. Director, Joseph Anthony. Cast: Burt Lancaster, Katharine Hepburn, Wendell Corey, Lloyd Bridges. Nominated for Best Actress, Katharine Hepburn. Best Music, Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture, Alex North. Giant, 1956. Sprawling epic covering the life of a Texas cattle rancher and his family and associates. Director, George Stevens. Cast: Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, James Dean, Carol Baker. Nominated for Best Motion Picture, George Stevens and Harry Ginsberg. Best Actor, James Dean, posthumous nomination, and Rock Hudson. Best Supporting Actress, Mercedes Cambridge. Best Screenplay, Adapted. Best Art Direction, Colour. Best Costume Design, Colour. Best Film Editing, and Best Music Score of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture, winning for Best Director, George Stevens. Stagecoach to Fury, 1956. A cavalry officer organises fellow passengers against Mexican outlaws while at a stagecoach stop. A character study of each passenger is provided via flashback. Director, William F. Claxton. Cast, Forrest Tucker, Murray Blanchard, Wallace Ford, Rodolfo Hoyos Jr. Nominated for Best Cinematography, Black and White, Walter String. The Tin Star, 1957. A cynical former sheriff turned bounty hunter helps a man, recently appointed acting sheriff, with his advice, his experience and his gun. Director, Anthony Mann. Cast, Henry Fonda, Anthony Perkins, Betsy Palmer, Mikkel Ray. Nominated for Best Writing, Story and Screenplay, written directly for the screen. Barney Slater, story. Joel Kane, story. Dudley Nichols, screenplay. Gunfight at the OK Corral, 1957. Lawman, Wyatt Earp, and outlaw, Doc Holliday, form an unlikely alliance, which culminates in their participation in the legendary gunfight at the OK Corral. Director, John Sturgis. Cast, Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Rhonda Fleming, Joe Van Fleet. Nominated for 2 Academy Awards for Best Film Editing and Best Sound Recording.
Anybody else want to try their luck?
Get moving. Come on, keep moving.
Cowboy, 1958. An idealistic tenderfoot Chicago hotel clerk is taken on a cattle drive to Mexico by famous trail boss Tom Reese, but discovers that cowboy life isn't what he expected. Director, Delmer Daves. Cast, Glenn Ford, Jack Lemmon, Anna Kashfi, Brian Donlevy. Nominated for Best Film Editing. The Sheepman, 1958. A brash stranger and his sheep arrive in a small town, but not soon after, the townspeople decide they've seen enough of him. Director, George Marshall. Cast, Glenn Ford, Shirley MacLaine, Leslie Nielsen, Mickey Shaughnessy. Nominated for Best Writing, Story and Screenplay, written directly for the screen.
Belle of the town, portrayed with zest by Shirley MacLaine. Bright discovery of around the world in 80
The Big Country, 1958. A New England sea captain in the 1880s arrives at his fiancée's sprawling Texas ranch, where he becomes embroiled in a feud between 2 families over a valuable patch of land. Director, William Wyler. Cast, Gregory Peck, Gene Simmons, Carol Baker, Charlton Heston. Nominated for Best Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture, winning for Best Supporting Actor, Earl Ives.
I knew exactly where I was all the time. You're a damn liar. If it's a fight you're looking for,
The Hanging Tree, 1959. Character study of a doctor who saves a local criminal from a mob who are trying to hang him, but then tries to control the life of the young man, realizing that he can exploit his secret. Directors, Delmer Daves, Carl Malden, Vincent Sherman. Cast: Gary Cooper, Maria Schell, Carl Malden, George C. Scott. Nominated for Best Music, Original Song: Jerry Livingston Music, Mac David Lyrics, for the song The Hanging Tree.
You ain't the devil, well, he sure
Just that way with me. They took the gold and set me free. And I walked away from the hanging tree. I walked away from the hanging tree. And my own true love,
The Young Land, 1959. An American gunslinger kills a Mexican man in California immediately after the Mexican-American War. The killer is arrested and put on trial for murder, with the Hispanic population waiting to learn of American justice. Director: Ted Tetzlaff. Cast: Patrick Wayne, Yvonne Craig, Dennis Hopper, Dan O'Hurley. Nominated for Best Music, Original Song: Dimitri Tomkin Music, Ned Washington Lyrics, for the song Strange Are the Ways of Love. Hello to any new and existing viewers on my channel. Thanks for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate likes and subscribers. Hit the notification bell to get my new videos. Take a look at my channel. The link is in the description. Bye for now. See you again soon.
Interesting facts about famous people.